Nathaniel, how you doing? You okay?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Fantastic. Nathaniel, thank you so much as well for coming on to my show today. I really appreciate it. I do understand you guys are very busy for what you guys do for New Hope, which is amazing. But let's just kind of concentrate on you, what your story is. So can you kind of introduce yourself about where you come from?
Yeah.
Is that all right?
Yeah, so my name is Nathaniel Ameyaw. I am a mixed race man. My mother being English and my father being Ghanaian. Yeah. I grew up in Nottingham, and my early years, I grew up in an area called St Anne's. I've got some younger brothers, younger sister, and the first thing that I think is important to note out that even from a young age, I felt an oddness. But I couldn't put my finger on it. I always remember feeling out of place for some reason. And I had a mixed upbringing. In my early years, my father was very funny, but he was very strict. So trying to understand my father and how to be around my father was difficult, because in one breath he's making me laugh, and then in another breath he's giving me some severe beatings. So what I understand now, what contributed to the uncomfortable feeling I had, or the low self-worth, was due to some of the physical chastisement I had as a young child, and it was quite severe, which impacted on my worth, if that made my confidence and things like that. But yeah, my young years is mixed. Similar to Gary, I was into sports and athletics. I wanted to be a 100-meter sprinter, fastest runner in my school, and that was my heart's desire. No interest in smoking, drugs, nothing like that. But when I was about 13, we moved areas from where I lived. I moved to Gary's area, to the Bronx, we call it, Broxton. And it was quite a culture change in that a lot of the young people was already smoking weed, drinking alcohol, and here comes me. I was quite, because of, I suppose, in my younger years, my dad wouldn't let us be around other children. He was so strict. So coming into that area, you know, it probably lasted about a year and a half, where I'm around making new friends and things. Everybody's smoking weed and things, and I'm not interested because I'm going to be an athlete. That's what I told myself. But the saying is, you sit in the barber's chair long enough, you'll get a haircut. And I remember the first day when I first ever tried some cannabis. And that was, I was about 15 years old, and that kind of started my journey into substances. So similar to Gary, I didn't really, I left school, I never got a job, I never worked, and I fell into a lifestyle, coming from a poor upbringing as well. I fell into a lifestyle that, we would find our ways of making money, a very criminal lifestyle. But there was levels to that, if that makes sense. So at this stage, at 15, just smoking cannabis, drinking alcohol, I start to take speed and things like that. Now, for me, what really hooked me into substances was that I was extremely shy, I struggled around people, and the moment I took a Class A substance, that changed. I just felt normal. I felt like I could talk to people, I could talk to girls. Before that, I would try and form a conversation to have with somebody, and by the time the words come out all mumbled and jumbled, and then I'm sweating, and I'll just retreat. It was just too difficult. If I was in my family home, I was all right. If I was around people that I knew, I was all right. The moment it comes to anybody new, something would happen in me. It would just be such an uncomfortable feeling. I'd be sweating, my hands are sweating. It was hard. I took my first Class A substance, and that all went away. So in my mind, straight away I latched onto that. So whenever I was going to be around people, or I've got a solution now, and that will be taking some type of substance, recreationally to begin with, but that was my introduction to substances.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's it's crazy how it can start off from something so small to like what you said in regards to communicating with somebody. You know, it's so common, isn't it, for people just to take something and then it makes them feel they can be something that really they're not. You're kind of adapted to somebody that ain't you. You know, you weren't born to be doing Class A drugs or anything like that. So obviously you've given us the start of your journey now. So you're on your Class A's. You was brought up in quite a poverty-stricken lifestyle.
Yeah.
A lot of people nowadays that probably will relate to that. With people being brought up in that lifestyle. And now you've got into the Class A's. Where is this kind of leading to now? So you're consistently on this, right?
Yeah, I think it went in variant, so I'm trying to live life as best I can in a legal lifestyle. I'm having sons and daughters. I'm trying to be a family man. The truth is I did a very poor job at it. The only thing, when I look back, that I was able to offer my sons and daughters was that I always wanted to make them happy. So I'd always do fun activities, but in terms of reliability and consistency, that wasn't me. So I think the lifestyle that I was leading, what I noticed about myself is that my parents did put good morals and values in me, but the more I was going down this way, the more the things I knew was right and the things I knew was wrong, I was starting to compromise. So I was starting to do things, and initially when I did things, I would get this guilty conscience. But little by little, that conscience just started to disappear. And I could notice more of a coldness in my thinking and in my behaviour. That's the best description. So I felt like I was losing. I had the memory of who I used to be, but because of the choices, because of the substances, because of the lifestyle, it was changing my personality, it was changing my heart, it was changing my mind. Do you get what I mean? So I was becoming quite a cold, selfish, self-seeking, self-centered person. And my relationships was really, I was only in relationships with people, friendships, because of what you could give me. And it was the other way round. That was just the world that we was in. So that was quite significant because I could feel myself changing. So I think party lifestyle contributed a lot, going out raving and things like that. That would be the vehicle that you know, best way I can describe it. That was a justification, or that's what I hid my drug use under. What was a clear indication that something was different for me is we would go out on a Friday night, come back early hours Saturday morning, everybody's going to bed. I'm not going to bed. I'm still wide awake. I'm ringing people up saying, come on, let's get on it. You're lightweight. I'm calling them lightweight. Saying, tired, man, I just want to go sleep. And I'm in my house and I'm taking more substances. I didn't want to come back down. I wanted to stay in that space. And that, I suppose, for me was the first kind of indicator something's not quite right here. You know, sometimes I go from Friday to Sunday, everybody else has gone to bed and gone to sleep. Do you get what I mean? So that was the first time I kind of really thought, okay, something's not quite right here. But because it was disguised under partying and going out, that was my justification to myself.
It's amazing how you can a lot of people will probably understand what you're saying. You know, you had the morals, you was brought up, you knew what was right, you knew what was wrong, and then all of a sudden you felt yourself was changing. And again, you know, from what I spoke to with Gary, you know, there's a stereotype here. People are probably looking outside and they're thinking he's been brought up fine, everything's going okay at home or anything, but realistically in your lifestyle, you know, you was doing all of these things, but people on the outside think everything's okay. And there's probably people that are listening that are, you know, maybe struggling with stuff, but on the outside they may be looking okay. So it's great that how you've kind of given us a picture of what it was like for you. Now in regards to, you know, you're staying up every night, everyone else ain't kind of putting up with your shit anymore, it's like, this is who you are. When there must have come a point where things were getting so bad, you were staying up every night now, but it must have really affected you physically, mentally.
Yeah, definitely. So I think what I was describing about is probably from the age of 15 going into the early 20s. So my drug use continued and progressed. And I think it was at the age of 25, I was introduced to cocaine. And that was the substance that very quickly destroyed me and destroyed my life. So I think between the ages of 25 and 31, everything changed. There was dramatic change in my life, and a pivotal point was one of my closest friends got murdered, and by this time I'm using cocaine on a daily basis, very entrenched in that lifestyle and the distribution of drugs and everything that comes with it, and he got murdered right outside my brother's house. And it was a big shock, but at that time also we'd had other people around us that had died as a result of either violence or everything connected to that way of life. And that was the first point where I just, like, it kind of just, because everything seemed a blur. From 15 to 28, 29, everything's a blur. And that was the first point where I kind of just stopped and just thought, who am I? What have I become? How am I influencing people around me? Because my friend, he was an actor, he was a DJ, he was an MC, he did performing arts, he was multi-talented, very gifted young man. And he was doing what he was doing in his world, but I was doing what I was doing. And he found what I was doing attractive, and he kind of came into my world. And I just felt that although I had nothing to do with what happened with his actual death, my influence on him, do you get what I mean? And that was the first point. How am I influencing my younger brothers? How am I influencing the people that are around me? And it was the first time I actually asked myself, and I didn't like the answer. It's like I just got a realisation. And that kind of sent me, that shame and guilt, sent me worse into my drug use, which kind of led up to a point where I'm on my own, I've been using heavily, and I've had enough. I don't want to be on this planet anymore. And this is where the thought ending my life came from. And I contemplated all the various ways. I just didn't have the courage. I didn't have the courage to take my life. And it's very strange. It's like, after considering all the ways and realising I didn't do it, this word just popped in my mind. Like, I can remember just saying, God, if you're real, please help me, because I'm dying. That, you know, and I go back to talking about, because of the physical chastisement that I had, I lost the ability to cry. And even to this very day, it's something that I struggle with, because through the beatings, as I'm getting older, the more I'm being hit, the more I'm saying, it don't hurt. You can't hurt me, kind of thing. So I developed this kind of resistance to where, in the end, my dad just stopped hitting me. Because, you get what I mean? But that's something that followed through. And another thing that made me feel weird as well, there was times in life where it felt like I should be feeling these feelings now, but I'm not feeling nothing. Do you get what I mean? But at that moment, I just burst out crying. And that for me was an indication that I actually really meant that with all my heart and soul. And I cried myself to sleep. Woke up the next morning, coincidentally it was the best night's sleep I ever had. And I woke up the next morning and something felt very different. I'm gone from using cannabis every day, sniffing just about every day, to waking up the next morning and not wanting a single thing. So I believe that I had some type of spiritual awakening, which took me on a journey, a wonderful journey for just under 2 years. Of faith, discovering God. I never had no religious upbringing whatsoever, no even concept of spirituality in any way, shape or form. But it was a beautiful 2 years. But I remember on that journey, I can remember just driving in my car and thinking, I know who I used to be, I don't know who I am anymore. And very simply just went out for one night with some friends, ended up using, and that took me down a very, very, very dark part of my using. And, you know, it's hard to put into words, but in the end, every time I used, I became mentally unwell. I would have psychotic episodes. Nobody wanted to be around me. The despair, the loneliness, it was horrible. And using full stop and having to deal with the consequences of your actions, I was definitely a slave to my addiction. You know, I remember being at home. I've got my 2 sons, one's just been born, and I said, I'll just pop out to get some bread and milk. Yeah. And I'll take the family car and I'm gone for a week. Now, genuinely, when I'm saying I'm going out to get some bread and milk, that's what I believed I was going to do. But this is how powerful my addiction was. As soon as I get out, the thought to use, I go and score, I use, and I can't deal with the shame and guilt, so I keep using. And that one night turns into a week, and I'm gone. I've took the family car. I've had a big impact on my own family, and that just kept happening and getting worse. And then even the people I was using with didn't want to be around me because of my behaviour. You know, I've become really, really paranoid and threatening, and something happened. I liken it, the best way I can describe it is, in years past I would take like a trip, you know, acid tablet, and sometimes I could have a bad trip, but I would go to sleep and wake up and it wore off. On this occasion, I'd used cocaine and I had a psychotic episode, and I went to sleep and woke up and I still felt the same, and I felt like my brain was broke. That's the only way I can describe it. And it scared the life out of me because I knew that I was entering into another realm now. This is not just about drug addiction, this was about me losing my mind. And that frightened the life out of me. And I remember like thinking, what am I going to do? And logically I just got the yellow pages, opened it up, rehab, rang a number. I think them times it was £30,000 or this. I'm like, what? Absolute despair. But I got introduced to the local drug service in Nottingham. And I remember going in there, and this was the first time that I've actually like opened up to another person and shared how I'm feeling, because where I'm coming from, you don't share anything, do you get what I mean? And just bared my soul, poured it all out, and he gave me a diary. And he says, I want you to write down when you use and how often you use. And I remember walking out of that appointment and just thinking, what the hell is that going to do? I was very deflated, wounded. And there was just another man sat in the waiting room, another service user who I've never met in my life. And he says, hey mate, do you want to go to one of these? And he just gave me a leaflet. And it was for NA meeting, do you get what I mean? And because I like got to the stage where I need to take action, and I was so deflated by what I just heard, meeting was on that same day. And I remember going to my first NA meeting, sitting in there and listening to everybody sharing. And there was some people that I'd known from my using. And my first thought was, this is a setup. And the reason why I thought it was a setup, because what everybody's talking about is what I was going through. Now, before I'd gone to that meeting, I'd decided that I'm evil and I've got a demon in me. Because I didn't understand why I couldn't stop. I didn't understand why I kept doing this thing that was destroying me and destroying those that I love. I used to look in my children's eyes to try and get strength. You know, I've got the urge, the obsession to use. I try and look in their eyes to get strength not to do it. But nothing was strong enough to stop. And I sat in that meeting, and the biggest thing that I came out